Hey everybody, welcome to the Journey podcast. Today I'm here with my co-host, Carol Ochaeta. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you for having me.
Today we have here with us Carlos Craig, president of the Southwestern Union Conference. Welcome, Carlos. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Appreciate the invitation. Good to be here with you all.
Absolutely.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
Yes. Carlos, you have been with the Union for how long now?
About 2.5 years now.
Yes. Yeah. Before that?
With the Texas Conference for 20 years.
Wow.
20 years. Yeah. Not as president, though.
Not as president. No, I don't think I'd be alive.
You were as president for how long?
10 years.
Okay. 10 years. And before that, you were?
I was vice president before becoming president, and before that, youth director of the conference.
Okay.
Oh, very nice.
All right. Good.
You can still see the youthfulness in you.
Well, I hope so. Thanks for being kind.
Tell us, I know that, for many people, we have, the local church. Mm-hmm. And many people don't understand the conference. And then after the conference, the union, and then the NAD, then the GC. Last year, I was presenting at Shark Tank at the evangelism Shark Tank at the pastors retreat. Mm-hmm. And I made a joke about, hey, people don't really care about, the NAD or the GC and the union. They say it's like the appendix.
We've heard
it's
that.
there for a reason, but we don't know what it is for.
That's true.
Tell us a little bit about that. What is it that you currently do in your position?
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. I didn't even know what the union did before I went there 2.5 years ago. But I would say that the union is sort of like the ligaments of the church. It kind of stretches and holds together the local church, local schools, the conference, ties the conference into the division, to the general conference. So we're like a go-between in many aspects. And most people won't understand exactly what that means as a go-between. But administratively, communication has to flow seamlessly in an organization as large as the church. The union kind of serves that purpose. We do not work directly with the churches or schools. We work directly with the conference leadership. So we're more like consultants with the conference leadership, and we're more like liaisons from the division to the local conferences. Any new policies, any new working relationships that need to be communicated, implemented, we kind of do that.
Okay.
Would you say you're kind of like the administration that oversees everyone else from like general conference?
The union works under the division.
Okay.
So we receive all of the latest communication that has to deal with the well-being of the church and its growth and development, communicate that to the conference leaders, help them to implement it in the local conference. I like to tell people the union are like the grandparents of the churches. We're not directly involved, the parents of the conference. But whenever, the churches have a deep need, like a loan to build or to purchase property, materials that they can't necessarily get from the conference, the union steps in and helps with those things.
Oh, very nice.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a bit of collaboration.
A lot.
Between organizations. And I know that the union is not only, works with Texas Conference, but other states.
The other conferences like Texaco, which is basically New Mexico, Oklahoma Conference, Arkansas, Louisiana Conference, and Southwest Region, which is the Black Conference.
That's right.
Of all 5 states.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How has that journey been, the transition from being president of Texas Conference to now president of the Union, Southwestern Union? How has that journey been for you?
Well, it's funny because when I was a pastor, I would say I will never be a conference president.
Well, guess what?
And when I was a conference president, I said, I'll never work for the union. Never tell God what you're not going to do, because he has a sense of humor. But truthfully, I have learned so much in these 2.5 years about the behind the scenes administrative work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, so to speak. There's so much that we don't see at the local church and local school level. And we just don't imagine all the mechanism of how this thing works and how great our God is in having a worldwide church and having it work fairly seamlessly in spite of how big it is. And so been a learning experience for sure.
I know it's funny that you mentioned that I'll never be, a conference president and so forth and so on. In one of the sermons that when you were a president and devotionals that you gave to the pastors, at several instances, you mentioned that somebody, when you were a young pastor, said to you, and I don't know who that was, but said to you, you will never be a pastor or some sort of that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of those experiences that can really damage you if you allow it to. But you have to kind of, like my grandfather used to say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move on with life independent of what people say and what they do to you. That's easier said than done. But I had a former conference president who sat in the very same office I sat in for 10 years as president tell me, Carlos, you will never work in ministry. And I tell people, don't be too hard on him, because I wouldn't have hired myself back then. I just didn't show anything that seemed like it was promising, the way I dressed, the way I talked and everything. I probably wouldn't have hired myself. But the thing of it is that as a church, we need to be careful how we view young people, especially, and not judge them by what we're seeing on the surface, because God has deeper plans, and what he has done for me and through me is miraculous. It has nothing to do with who I am or my ability. It's God taking something that seemed insignificant to other people and using it for his honor and glory. I could have used that to say, I don't want to have anything more to do with the church because of what that individual said to me. But we need to remember, all of us who have been hurt by the church, it's not that person or even that church. It's a whole movement that's much larger than that. And the most important thing is it's a God who loves us that's behind even that ugly face that we're encountering at that moment.
Would you have said, Pastor, hearing you as I feel young still, so I like to say as a younger person, but hearing you is actually really impactful, because would you say that even though that individual judged you correctly or incorrectly, would you say that he was right in the sense what was eternally inside of you, where you were spiritually in that time of your life? He saw the outside, but how were you? Can you share a little bit about what your spiritual life looked like in that stage of your life?
That's a great question, Carol, because he judged right externally from what he saw, but he missed the whole internal part of it, what I could become by the grace of God. And that's where we miss the boat as church leaders. We just judge 100% on what we see on the external. We need to get to the point where we see beyond that. Look into a person's soul, listen to how they talk. And he did not realize that God was already doing a work inside of me. And it was very damaging at the moment. When I left that office, I said, I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to work for the church. I wasn't even sure if I was going to ever set foot in a Seventh-day Adventist church again. And I was okay. I was right in feeling that way because I had been hurt. I had received a direct hit against my soul. But God took me on a journey from there to lead me and to teach me it's really not about the person in front of you. It's about the vertical relationship.
But people forget that. People forget so much.
Easily forgotten.
And opinions matter so much in today's society.
It does.
It's unbelievable to see how, and I really do like to speak towards the younger generation because I feel like I connect more with them. But if you really ask me, it's really unfortunate that one individual can completely shift an individual's life, like completely. And to the point where when we're talking about church, like individuals can leave church just because of one comment, because of one misunderstanding, and a lot of it sometimes are misunderstandings, I would say.
Absolutely.
But that's the reality, and that's where we live in today.
It is. Yeah.
In your journey in leadership, as a pastor, as a coordinator, as president, you said off camera, I think that if I would have been here as president of conference more than 10 years, I would have made it. It's draining. How has the church contributed to those hardships? And when I mean the church, I don't mean like the local church, but the entire organization, including people. And how were you able to overcome them?
That's a great question, Sergio, because I said off camera that when you're a conference president for that long, it takes years off your life, and I said it jokingly, but it's literal. The more intense you are in the way that you work for the church, or the way that I'll give, just using a church member, because, that's where it is really. Even as a church member, the more intensely you serve God and you work in the church, the more hurtful it is when someone comes at you with an insult, with criticism, with belittling, with demeaning. If you're kind of detached, it doesn't hurt you. But if you're intense and you have fervor about what you're doing, that's where it really hurts. And the devil knows that. So if you've ever been really hurt badly and you can't let it go, it's kind of eating at your soul. It's because there's an intensity between you and God. And you got to look at that as a plus, as an advantage. Why am I so hurt? Well, at some point I was really connected to God. How do I get back there? And you have to get back there without the congregation. You have to get back there without the church. You have to get back there without the help of the wider group. At the end of the day, it's just between you and God. Connect with him. Listen for his voice. Listen for his direction. And in the midst of all the other noise, if you really concentrate on him, you'll get back to where you were.
So what do you say, Pastor, if I'm understanding correctly, the pain that you, or the hurt that you've encountered in the past, it's because you care. Mm-hmm. Like Christ cares about the church.
Right.
So it's like, God hurts when we hurt.
Yes.
So when you're genuinely connected with the people, no matter what they do to you,
right.
It's almost like when a father is, upset or hurt by their son, and the son does wrong, but the father is not out there to punish the son. No. If anything, it hurts him even more to have to discipline that child at that moment. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you have to be connected with God. You have to have a relationship with God, because when people hurt you, it's not, you're not trying to get back, and it's not with anger. It's pure love. Exactly. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail on the head there, Carol, because the more tender-hearted you are, the more you love people, and the more you just enjoy and be with people. That's when the attacks hurt.
Right.
If you're arrogant and you're brass and you're just superficial, you really don't get hurt a lot, But when you love people and you genuinely care about people and you want to do service for people, and then someone comes at you, it can be really overbearing. It can destroy you, your soul. And so you have to find a way to get beyond that momentary act. And I always tell the young people in particular, the younger kids, and it's hard for them to understand it because you have to live a little bit to get some of these things. But just understand that the person that's yelling at you or criticizing you, the person that's right in front of you, that's not them. It's the evil spirit using them. And that helps you not to take it personal. Because I've had some people say some really nasty things to me over the years, and it's been in these latter years that I processed. It wasn't them. They weren't that evil.
But at that moment,
it seems
we
like
forget, right?
We do forget.
That's like, we forget. I pray for you, Lord. Yeah. But the reality is that we can come back and we can really, when our emotions are calm, we can take a step.
Process
yes,
it, yeah.
It makes all the difference.
Jesus felt that. And you can tell when you read the Bible, when he was on the cross and he was being insulted by all those people around the cross, he's being spat upon and ridiculed. He shouted something out from the cross that we should think about. He said, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? And we're talking about the Son of God. Connected at every moment with his Father, he felt disconnected from his Father. Why? Because of what the people around him were doing. So when we feel discouraged and we feel like we don't want anything to do with the church and we feel hurt to the point, we should remember Jesus. He felt that, but he did not disconnect. Wow. He continued to be connected, and he said, not my will, but your will.
But if it's your will, let it be done,
That's
regardless of how painful.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a lot of people who have felt disconnected, not only from the God, but a lot of people have seen the actions of church leaders.
Yes.
As church leaders, I think that we have failed the mark many times.
We have.
But they have seen that, and they have disconnected from it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are where the wounds come in. And then eventually, with time, and I think that's the challenge, that with time, I'm able to look back 10 years ago. I'm like, yeah, I messed that up. Or like, do you have any church scars with you?
Well, Sergio, I'm going to change your question around a little bit. Instead of talking about my wound, I'm going to talk about a wound that I inflicted, because I'm still processing it today, how much I hurt a group of people.
Wow. And
that was 7 months ago. And my grandson, Dorian, he's 15. He plays basketball. He's 2 inches taller than I am. So he's tall for his age, and he loves basketball. He plays on the team. They were in a tournament 7 months ago, and he was going up for a shot, and the opposing team, they fouled him and knocked him down. And I got so mad at the ref. I get too involved in these games. I got so mad at the ref, I started shouting at him. The ref stopped the game. He came over to me, and I'm still shouting at him. And we had this exchange back and forth. And I looked over at my wife. My wife was like, oh, no, here we go again. And long story short, I just embarrassed myself. I got lost in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Moses moment where I struck the rock out of anger. The point I'm getting to is, after that game was over, church members were coming by, and they were just looking at me and not even wanting to shake my hand. And that's where it clicked in. Look how much damage I did to these members that witnessed how I reacted in that moment.
Wow.
They said, Pastor Craig. And then all of a sudden they see this other side of me where my anger took over the moment and had a Moses moment. And it really, to this day, when I think about that, it makes me emotional, because everything that I've preached over the years and taught, for someone who witnessed that at that moment, that could have detracted that whole thing. And so the scars, these are the type of scars that we as church leaders leave on our members. And there might have been a young person there that said, you know what, I don't know if I want to continue in the church.
Wow.
Look at the union president, acting like that. So it's a lesson that there's still some of the old man in there.
Right.
That has to be subjugated, that has to be subdued.
Yeah.
And so we're never quite there spiritually. We're all in this boat getting better. And then secondly, we're never off duty as church leaders. The way we act and react and talk and everything, it has an impression on people. And those are the type of scars that we just have to desperately avoid giving.
Wow.
It's very, like my student says, we're a masterpiece in progress.
That's right.
But don't forget you're a masterpiece, but still in progress.
Yes. Yes.
But Pastor, you mentioned something, and with that story, I actually like that it wasn't really an example in the church.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes as pastors, I'm married to a pastor, but sometimes as a pastor, I think that you think you have a congregation within the church and certain people and individuals. But I believe that you're called to serve, and not pastor or no pastor. You're called to serve and act everywhere just the same. Of course,
Absolutely.
Trying to be the best example in glorifying God's name wherever you are at. So I guess my question to you would be, was it more hurtful because you felt like maybe you stepped out of your zone and maybe treated someone, would you treat someone different that is not from church, or vice versa? What was it that stood out that really hurt you from that experience?
I think what hurt me was the fact that I've been in ministry now for 34 years, and that type of a reaction maybe could have been excused 25 years ago. But at this point, I was like having this debate with myself. Carlos, really? At this stage? At 62 years old, 34 years in the ministry, and you still can be triggered into that reaction? Something's missing deep down that people don't see. Something's missing in there. So it was a good thing in a sense. It was bad that I acted like that, but a good thing in a sense for my own spirituality to recognize there's still something there that needs to be corrected. And for me to really be instrumental in helping other people to correct things, I've got to fix that first,
right,
and get to the bottom of that to be able to, with integrity, speak to other people about other things.
And you know what? It takes, I mean, I'm thankful because it takes courage to say, look, perhaps I do have some scars in my heart that people have done to me. But as a leader and as a pastor, let me share a scar that I have perhaps caused on somebody. That's deep. And that takes maturity and courage to share as well.
I would say spiritual maturity.
Spiritual maturity.
I've always said that. There's a very fine line with that. A question that I would have for you would be, how have you navigated? Because one of the things my husband actually has done with me being in ministry, he doesn't, I'll say this, I guess, precisely. We can always edit. But, he doesn't, we have this thing where I just will not participate in board meetings. I will not be part of a church board. And at first I didn't understand that because I just like to be part of ministry. So if you might have to be, in a board meeting. And so one of our mindset for that is because it's to protect me from maybe holding something against someone, because in meetings, you understand things can get a little bit rough.
Yes.
And I respect that. I do respect that to this day. And I can understand that because I want to be able to walk into church and genuinely hug every individual.
Absolutely.
But sincerely, because, you can hug people, but God knows you didn't mean that hug. So it's meaningless. So how have you navigated that road, especially with protecting your family?
Yeah, and that's so important for us in ministry or any leadership in the church, to protect your family from the hardships and the pains, the wounds that can happen as you lead in the church. And I think for a leader, I always would tell our pastor, Sergio, will remember this, that God 1, family 2, ministry 3rd. And when you keep that priority list straight, then you're always protective of your family in the sense that you don't allow the church to run them over. Because my father's generation, they believed God, church, and then family. So you would sacrifice your family for the church. And some of those scars that I have are from having a father who was a pastor, who never hugged me, who would never throw the football around in the backyard with me, who would not come to my basketball games, who would not have conversations about sex or girls or anything that's, deep issue in life. He would avoid those conversations. And so those are the type of scars that I had, that I brought into my marriage, into my ministry, that I had to overcome, work through, and not just lean on the cliche of the sins of the father to carry over to the son and to the next son. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we truly believe what the word of God says, that if I'm in Christ, I'm a new creature, then I don't have to repeat the same mistakes of the past. I can rise by the grace of God to a different level.
Amen.
And in that rising to a different level, I protect my wife, my kids, my grandkids. You don't have to go through that. What I do over here. You enjoy your relationship with God in a space that's safe, and you're not subject to all the criticism and all the belittling that goes on in the other space. So my duty as a God's worker to protect them from that.
So you would say they are, besides God, they are number one in your life.
They are.
And they come
Definitely.
first.
They are. Yeah.
I respect that.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you would tell a person who is struggling with a wound that has been caused by the church?
Yeah, I've been in the process of the last 3 years of getting a master's degree in psychology, behavioral health. And so the last 3 years have taught me a lot of things I didn't learn in the previous 31 years of ministry. They don't teach you in an MDiv degree how to deal with the psychology of the person. And what we fail to understand as a church is when we hurt somebody, when we've wounded them, it's not just spiritually. It's emotionally, it's intellectually, it's physically to a degree, because some emotional wounds are so violent that they affect you physically. There are people who have high blood pressure today because they were hurt in a relationship. There are people who have diabetes today because they were hurt in a relationship. There are people who are chronically ill because they were hurt and they don't know how to process it. I would just say to those who've been hurt deeply, talk about it. Number one, find someone that you can really trust and talk about it. That's not just everybody. You can't talk to everybody. Find someone that has proven themselves to be trustworthy, and then release that. Number one, get it out of your system. Because what we don't release, we internalize, and that toxicity really does a number on us. Number two, pray. Simple as that. Pray. Don't even read the Bible or, get into Bible studies or anything like that. Pray. Just take time to talk to God, even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes every morning or 2 or 3 minutes every evening. Open your heart up to God, and then just be quiet for a little bit and listen to what he's going to tell you. Because I can tell you from experience, God always responds. May not be in the way you expect him to respond, but he always responds.
Wow.
And then number three, that person who's been wounded and hurt, you need to learn how to choose those associations around you that are going to build you up, edify you, and make you a better person. Because everybody you associate with, they either make you a better person or they tear you down. There's no in between.
Wow.
And you got to find those people in your life that build you up. Because those people in building you up are going to give you a cleaner route back to God. If you have a lot of toxic people in your life, you're never going to find your way back to God. But you have a lot of people who build up character, build up inner strength. That's going to help you get back to God.
And what you said, I don't know, I had never seen it like that, but it's so true. And we talk about mental health, and people don't understand what you feel internally, like the emotion, all that has to do even with your health.
It does.
I never really, truly, if diabetes, all that stuff is relevant to what you feel.
Absolutely.
And it all starts with your emotions, with your mind, and it all just goes from there. It's incredible. We talk about it and we mention it. You need to exercise, you need to drink water, the basis of it. But I think it's a lot more profound. And for those that know and are believers and know God, we have no excuse.
No excuse.
And we need to wake up and we need to get busy. And like you say, we have to pray. And I always like to, I try to say, I try to avoid the word prayer when I talk to my students especially. I always say, guys, you need to talk to God. They don't understand. Sometimes when I say pray, they're like, how do you pray? Okay, talk to God. Oh, okay, that makes sense. But it just shows, that they haven't had those fundamentals, and maybe they haven't even had that role model in their lives to truly, it all just seems like it's a system and we're supposed to follow and do this and do that. But no one really takes the time to explain, this is going to happen if you don't do this, and this will happen if you do this. And it's all for your good.
Yeah.
It all plays in.
Absolutely.
My wife's a preacher, Carlos. My wife's a preacher.
I see that. Yeah.
I'm just passionate about the Lord. That's all.
That's great. That's great.
What about to a pastor? What would you say to a pastor who has had a hard time in ministry, but he's still fighting the good fight? What would you say to a pastor?
Yeah, and for pastors, there's another level of complication when we deal with, woundedness. And that level of complication is you become accustomed to serving while you're hurt. And it's much like a soldier missing an arm or missing a leg and trying to go out into the battle and still fight.
Ooh.
And, military wise, anybody will tell you, if you're not complete, you're not going to be an effective instrument of war.
Mercy.
So for pastors or teachers, we get wounded, and then we fall into this complacency of, well, that's just the way it is. I'm wounded. I'm just going to go out and put on a good face. And the level of complication becomes, then I get used, for lack of a better term, I get used to faking it. And when I get used to faking it, then I get further away myself from restitution in God. Because now I've learned how to fake it. I've learned how to get along without his help. And I just get deeper and deeper into that hole that I'm in, emotionally, spiritually, physically. So for pastors and teachers, we have to be careful that we don't just put on a mask every day and go out and go about our business. Take the mask off once in a while and be vulnerable. Let other people know that you have your struggles as well. Let other people know that you need to be prayed for as well. let other people know that it's not cool to cross that boundary. Stand up for yourself once in a while. Set the boundary. There's no badge of honor in continually to be badgered spiritually and emotionally. You got to set boundaries for yourself so that you can work out of that toxic hole. And when you set boundaries, you begin to give God and the Holy Spirit room now to work and rework and to redo who you are.
I love it. Because I wanna thank you for being transparent and honest. I really like how you as a leader of an organization, have taken that stance of, hey, I'm not perfect and I have failed even though I have this many years of experience. And I think that that's true of the church in general, right? Beginning from, the cradle, all the way to the one who preaches, at the pulpit. Mm-hmm. I think that we come to church not because we're perfect. I think because, we come to church, we lead a church not because we're perfect, but, we're trying to heal. Mm-hmm. We're trying to continue fighting the good fight. Mm-hmm. We have that hope. And in the midst, yes, we hurt one another and others hurt us. Yes. But it's beautiful, the responsibility, the honesty, and the perhaps giving us permission to work things out with one another, instead of, shutting the whole church thing and shutting God from our lives. It feels that might be the wrong way to go to heal our wounds. Granted, like you mentioned, some toxic people and whatnot, that's a different story. But to quit church or to quit God is a whole different spectrum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Pleasure to be with
Thank you for coming.
You're a Cowboys fan?
Yes, sir.
How many children you got?
3.
3 kids.
3 kids.
All right. Boys, girls?
My oldest is Danette. She's 38. And David is the middle one. He's 37. And Daphne's the youngest, 32.
All right. Favorite thing to do for fun?
Music. Love to play the guitar. Love to listen to music. Love to play on praise teams. All of that. Anything music. Love it.
You mentioned you're a big fan of your grandson who plays basketball. Yes. Do you get out there and play with him?
I do, but he embarrasses me. So
he tries.
Sometimes he says, "Papa, just stand right there." And
you're his biggest cheerleader.
So.
That's awesome.
Fun fact that not many people know about you.
Let's see. Many people don't know that when I was 16, 17 years old, I said there's 3 things I'll never do. Number 1, never marry a Mexican girl. Number 2, never be a pastor, because my dad was a pastor and I just hated everything I saw about it. And number 3, I'll never have kids.
Wow.
Because I used to detest kids when I was young.
Are you serious?
I just couldn't stand kids. So God said, okay, you don't want kids? Here's 3 plus 6 grandkids.
Oh, that's amazing.
And you don't want a Mexican girl? Okay, here's a Mexican girl.
So what you're saying, Pastor, is you're supposed to tell God what you want. And then,
there you go.
But really you're saying that because you want the opposite.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
Exactly.
Married to Letty.
Amazing woman. Send her our regards.
Mera mexicana.
She will. Mera mexicana.
Hay orden en la casa, entonces.
Claro.
The very first fight we had when we were dating was over the flags. Because it was a 16th of September. 16 de septiembre.
Yeah.
We were in Montemorelos. And they had the parade downtown and the Mexican flag came by. And I had the nerve to say to her, my flag is better looking than your flag. Whoa, you don't say that to a Mexican. She left me standing right there and she took off. I don't know what happened that day. She was walking. I was running and I still couldn't catch up with her.
That's so funny.
She was so mad. For 2 weeks, she didn't speak to me.
Wow.
Mercy.
Yeah, so I learned early.
Hey, she said
she said the bar. Political stuff with Mexicans.
She put chile rellenos in front of you. You ate those chile rellenos.
That salsa was really spicy the next day.
Very.
All right. Any
No, I just want to say, Pastor, that it's an honor to be here with you and to be able to hear you. And at the end of the day, to also just remind viewers and people who will watch this video that you are human. You know,
Very much
position and title does not entitle us to be really, you know, better or less or more, you know, and I salute you. My husband and I have always have very much respect for you. You are able to maintain a common ground with all people that come across you. I'm a young person who you probably haven't encountered much, and I came later on in your years when I got married to Sergio, but I can say from a very young age, I've heard about you and the things that have been said about you, and I can say that there's so much love and respect from the people. And even from a young girl perspective, the things that you have shown me and what I know and seen, and you just never know who's looking. And so I just want to thank you for your service and thank you for what you do, because I know you have a heart for the youth. I know you have a heart for the people, and sometimes the people that you least expect certain things from, you never know who you will impact. So may God continue to bless you and your family.
Girl. Appreciate that.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I got, when I became president of the Texas Conference, one of my predecessors, Steve Gifford, he said to me, always tell the truth. That way you don't have to remember what you said.
That's good.
That was the best advice I've ever gotten.
What about worst advice you've ever gotten?
Ugh. It was from him. Same guy. But he told me that you have to be political.
Okay.
He told me, Carlos, you got to learn how to be political, because you're not going to survive in the church and church leadership if you don't learn how to be political. Worst advice. Worst advice. And I tell young people all the opposite. Don't be political.
Favorite pastor of Texas Conference whose name starts with an S and it finishes with an O.
Let me think about that one for a little bit. Oh, Sergio. Chayatan.
Yeah. All right. We got it. See, that's how you end an interview right there.
That was good.
Thank you, Carlos. Say hi to the family for us.
I sure will.
Yes.
Thank you,
We
guys.
love you guys.
Appreciate you.
God bless.
God bless you.